thoughts on this, Bob, but the park board in the past, the city council used to hold dog park hearings. And I'm just gonna be honest, because I've sat through many of these, and we even had to have a young lady escorted out with a police officer because they get pretty divisive whenever there's dogs that attack other dogs or attack people. They believe that it can't be their dog. And so we'd gone through a long process where we'd had a police officer that had trained several police dogs. We had a behavioralist with dogs in, and they went through and explained that if a dog bites somebody, it's a zero tolerance policy. And before I took over, meaning the city, took over regulation of the dog park, it was done with a peer group. And it was getting out of hand because it wasn't whether your dog was friendly or not. It was, if you knew someone on the board, your dog could attack everybody. And it got to the point where it was becoming a dog park known to have a lot of alpha dogs that if you tried to bring your dog in for the first time, it was probably going to get beat up pretty bad. I have 2 dogs myself. One I would bring into the dog park, the other I wouldn't take anywhere near it because I know that dog would be causing problems. But some people don't see it that way. The park board, the city council had these dog park hearings. It got out of control at a park board meeting. Some of the council may remember that, or pardon me, at a city council meeting. So we created an ordinance where the public works director had the ability to suspend for up to 90 days and make a recommendation to the park board. For many years, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, if there was a bite, the park board would suspend. There's been new park board members, and according to Tiffany, they don't really want to do that. They want to turn this back over to the city council. My recommendation is you keep it there, but if you do hire park board members, they need to be aware that that may be
Yeah.
Part of their job.
divisive and very unpleasant part of the job. But we need to get back to keeping a policy in there because it's a lot of, you can't have much room for discrepancy. And honestly, if a dog is biting somebody, there's potential exposure for the city down there if you know the dog is violent and or aggressive and you allow that to happen. I think we've cleaned it up pretty well, but Bob, some of those initial hearings were brutal.
Yeah.
Letters to the city attorney suing us, letters to the former mayor, Jim White, can't do this, this
You're
is
saying
crazy.
dogs were biting people, not other dogs?
People and dogs.
Okay.
We had
So-
one hearing where, when I called the lady, she admitted her dog bit the guy, but, well, it was the way he walked. He swung his hands as he walked, so he deserved it. It was bizarre. There was another guy that,
So
Oh,
are
it's
they
up
not
to dog.
issued an ordinance violation or no? It's just a hearing?
they are, but,
Okay.
the ordinance violation only does so much. They come
Right.
back the next day, so we started doing suspensions and try to work through it. And we've always offered the ability if the dog is having aggressive, if it was a bite, you were done. You were banned from the park. If there was other aggressive behavior, I don't want to get into the dog behavior, but
Yeah, no.
there's a lot mouthing and there's a lot of these other, if you could go to, the doghouse on Antire Road and come back with a clean, basically a non-aggression, because they can take your dog through a series of training and a series of steps, you are welcome back in. Everyone, not one person that we've ever pushed out could ever come back with that receipt, so to speak. So it's something to think about, especially with the park board member. They need to be aware this is an opportunity. And also, it's for the rest of the council, we're going to be having some discussions. I can even throw that on there. You need to decide if you want to do this. Bob, did I misspeak at all?
I mean, those hearings are really unpleasant.
Yeah.
Very unpleasant. People that are coming, trying to get their dog, we're talking about their children.
Yeah.
They're really.
Yeah.
And it's legitimate. I mean, they're legitimate. But, we feel some of the board members, feel that, the hearings, are not what they want to be on the park board for. And they figure the decisions, those are so important that they should bring back to the council.
So, we've had cases where we've got a young lady, I'll never forget, her leg she was, at the time, she was 8 months pregnant. She walked in and her leg was punctured and she had a monster bite, and she had 2 or 3 people say, this is what happened, and somebody stood up and argued that that wasn't the case, and I mean, they do get divisive, so
So,
Park Board is not taking this lightly when they say we don't want to do it.
No, I
They can get pretty bad.
no, it was bad
So-
when we had it.
So you're saying that
So you were here for it, Karen?
Yes.
the,
Okay.
I was here for
It
it
would-
as well.
so you're saying that if somebody would be to consider a position on that board, then they, ideally, they would be willing to participate in the hearings and consider
Consider the fact that they may have
suspensions
to
for
take a
a,
dog
for
out.
a violent, aggressive dogs.
I think what had happened is we had basically gone through a series of hearings, and so for a while there was not many aggressive dogs, and so there was a lull there where there was some turnover, and then we've had a few recently where there were some bites, and then I think once one park board member abstained, then I think that kind of opened the floodgates.
It's a permit you get, right?
No, you get a
It's a
dog
license.
tag, yes, you get a
I mean,
you
I've
get a
done it, and I
license.
had a dog, and I took him a couple times. I'm like, he is not meant for a dog park, and stopped going. But I'm just curious, like, is the same process used for like revoking a license as are used in other areas of the city, or is it special? Like, I'm just curious if there's a way we can redo the process that makes it less.
You have to obviously offer due process.
Right.
And so I can't be judge,
Right,
jury.
right.
There needs to be somebody past me.
Sure,
I basically do
right.
all the legwork. I do the interviews. I prepare a memo to the council. Sometimes I'll even say it's unclear what may or may not have happened, but there's photos of, a dog's ear that's bloodied, and
And
there's
you all
vet
are
bills.
voting on whether or not to revoke the license
Suspend.
or suspend it,
I give the recommendation, though.
and then you,
They uphold it. Or recently, you guys have done suspensions.
instead of revoking.
And so the problem is when you get there, people don't want to point that out because they know that dog will be coming back in a couple of months, and usually the owner's upset with the person that said something. So really what's happening is creating a lot of division there. And again, dogs are meant to play, but some people's idea of a dog's playing
And it's
is completely different than others. If somebody's dog's getting mauled by the other dog and there's blood all over the dog, that's where some people draw the line. And so these are the types of disputes
Yeah.
and discussions you have. The dog park, for a while there, it was pretty controversial. In fact, for the park board, I think we were wondering, we're spending so much time on the dog park, is this something even worth it,
You might mention though, before the hearings were turned over to the park board, the city council reviewed them.
Oh, correct.
I know a couple times that they had those, they had a court reporter, and we were here for what, 2 hours?
It was bad.
It's my suspicion that, city council, that city council, chose not to do that anymore. It was suggesting that they turn it over to the park board.
What I'm wondering is if we can engage the services of the St. Louis Mediation Services. We talked about, I would like to get it out of the hands of our citizens because there's too much opportunity there for bad feelings between some citizens and other citizens. And usually, you're right, these are very subjective matters. And someone that's a trained mediator that's not part of that board, even if the board sits in on that mediation, I would still have someone who's trained to conduct the mediation and make some type of determination.
We can do that, but again, the bottom line is if there's proof of a bite, it's a bite. I don't, that's the point, the zero tolerance policy worked well for many, many years, and when the suspensions start back up, that's caused the problem. And Unfortunately, we've even said there may be a case where a dog is, didn't start it, but if they're both bloody and they both bit each other and there's evidence that, meaning witnesses, zero tolerance seemed to be the only thing that really worked well. Because otherwise you're really getting into whether my dog's not aggressive or whether it was play or what. I would say we
Dog
went several
owners.
years without one, correct? Several years after people realized
So
what the policy was.
is there a possibility of returning to the zero tolerance policy?
I think we should. And I plan on talking to the park board about it. But Tiffany, who attended a couple of recent park board meetings, told me that the park board was heading this direction, and so they wanted me to talk to you about it.
Is anyone aware of another municipality that has a dog park? I'm just curious if we can look, I mean, have we?
U City
We have
does.
researched it.
You have, and this
I
is,
think
does,
the U City does.
Brentwood started theirs more recently.
so what's,
um,
I mean, is there a process similar for when they have I mean, I'm just curious if there's a different process.
Time, there wasn't many processes. Most of them were essentially just a free-for-all.
I wonder.
I can do another
if we
follow-up.
could-
It's been a
Yeah.
while. For a while, we were the only dog park in the area, so it
Well, that's what I
was
thought.
really critical when somebody got
Yeah,
removed, they couldn't go to Brentwood. They
Right.
couldn't go anyplace else.
What would be,
Yeah, the
what would be beneficial is
you
if,
have to think someone else has a
if we can categorize behaviors and punishments for those behaviors, so it doesn't become subjective process. You can define the severity of the infraction,
One
and
puncture, two punctures, little blood, a lot of blood.
you have to do something.
Yeah, I think
because,
it'd be
you know,
hard to do.
Then when people aren't treated the same,
Right.
Well,
then
That's why.
For the most part, it's a week-long suspension, and it's not the end of the world. You just don't go back for a week, or if there's a bite, you're out of the park.
well, so park board will make a recommendation to council.
They are making a recommendation. They want you guys to take it over. I'm saying I wouldn't do that, but it's absolutely the council's decision. You're going to be sitting here with these long meetings. But I think you have several park board members that have done it for a long time, and they don't like it, but they understand that's part of the process. There's some other park board members that they didn't sign up for it, so to speak. So it may be a
Is there
You have any
anyone
thoughts,
interested in
Jackie?
taking on this?
Could we do
We
a
could do some
s-
research
a
first and see if there's a-
Subset?
pardon?
Yeah.
Why would it have to be the full council? Why not just three of us? And we
Yeah,
could
like
switch
a
it
hearing,
around.
yeah.
I think as long as you have due process, it's fine, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you have three,
got-
I mean,
odd number.
I personally would be a fan of it staying with the park board, or
I would personally like to first research and see if there's like
what
another
other,
way
Better
to solve the
process.
problem. I mean, I have to think that there's someone out there who has the same problem, maybe is using a different process that works for them. I mean, even if it's not in the St. Louis county, region, someone, I mean, I don't mind doing some research too.
I'm
but if-
sure our city attorney has written very many dog
Perhaps we
park.
could have her be the independent person.
There we go.
but
Okay.
but if that's-
So moved.
I mean, I like Sean's idea. that if
So what I'll do
back here.
is I will follow up again, and we did initially, but it's been a long time to find out if people are having these types of problems.
How they're dealing with it.
yeah.
And there was even a morning group. It was to the point where you.
Oh,
really
yeah, I went there in
didn't-
the morning. They're a tight-knit group. Yeah.
So you know what I'm talking about. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, they would put their chairs in a semicircle and they wouldn't look, and their dogs would be defecating everywhere or destroying some other dog
They're
that
nice
just
people.
happened to.
Nice people.
Yeah.
Yes, very nice.
But that was what got me involved, because we had a number of people that were sending me these random emails or leaving me these voicemails that say I can't even go down there without my dog getting attacked. And
Can we just
You know-
get rid of the dog park?
that was actually seriously, the park board was seriously for a while thinking of making that recommendation, because they were spending such an inordinate amount of time on these hearings.
Well, if you can't get along, just take it away. That's what we do
Yeah,
with kids.
I'd be,
Well, actually, we actually had to say, if you can't pick up your waste at one point, we're gonna go ahead and close the dog park for a couple of weeks. And it was so bad you couldn't even walk down there for a while.
I'm all for you doing a little bit of research and seeing if there's some other effective way that other communities are doing it. And I'm not opposed to looking at the council taking it back, because I really don't want the park board to become the, dog park tribunal.
And I agree with,
Besides like the
Separate
Board of
board,
Adjustment
people
that
who
you may
sign
have
up
to tell
for it.
somebody no, to me, which is tough, somebody's trying to build a deck or something of that nature, Board of Adjustment, you do have some difficult decisions sometimes, because you have
Yep.
a set of standards you have to follow, whether it meets a variance requirement or not, and they're somewhat rigorous. The park board, dog park hearings are hands down, to me, the most divisive issue that any of your board or commission members have to deal with. Design and review obviously tells
And-
people no too.
Were those only happening when there was not the zero tolerance policy?
They were happening at such frequency for a while because there was no city involvement. It was the city's park.
Sure, yeah.
They actually had dog park swims here for years.
Mm-hmm.
They had approximately $18,000 in an account, but they couldn't decide how to spend it.
That was the breaking point of that.
That was the
particular
breaking
board.
point.
Yeah.
So we took that over. We took those reserves because it was all done this way. I put in that swimming pool there, and I put the sign up, which was, we did a survey, how do you want to spend your money? And then we got input from the park board. The number one was the pool, number two was the sign, which was coincidentally basically about how much money they earned all those years at the dog park pool. And we sent that out and we installed that, and from that moment on, no more volunteers for the dog park swim that we have, and it's all done by staff because, again, there was a small group that did run everything there. And so there was some good and some bad with that, but the bad was, they had very aggressive dogs, and no one, people would get banned or they would get put on suspension, but it was never the dogs that were really causing the problems.
and I agree with the proposal by Sean with regards to having a subset of, if it comes down to council making a decision, a rotating group of three council members makes sense to me. We should all share in the fun.
Okay, Eleanor, what's your question?
I mean, I was just still trying to understand if there was less of a problem when it was a zero tolerance policy, and like when did it?
No question.
Yeah,
in
that's what I
fact-
think
So
it
which
should
is
go back.
sort of one way that a municipality could handle it. So I look forward to maybe once you get information back from Brentwood and U City and
And keep in mind, and this is what had happened, it was so effective that for several years, we had no dog hearings where we were having them, every few months.
right.
Because
Had
not only
a
that,
c- a clear-
people realized,
Yeah.
I don't wanna get kicked out of here, I better pay a little bit better attention to
Yeah.
my dog. And so, and we took the chairs, the removable chairs, we have areas where you can sit, but they're up against the fence, so you're still
Right.
at least facing
Would
the
it,
park.
so would it be,
Oh, go ahead.
would it be possible to hear from Park Board about how they feel about
Bob, you-
the hearings versus going back to the zero tolerance? Like, was the
And
zero?
why did that change? Sorry, I missed that.
New park board members
Okay,
came on, they had to
okay.
hold a hearing.
Okay.
And I
Sorry,
believe
I
one
didn't
member
interrupt,
was a
Eleanor, I
dog
just
park
wanted to hear
member and recused and then the others, the newer members again.
Oh, because they
did the
didn't want to
same.
make the decision.
Yeah, just over time, boards change. And so they weren't there for the police officer, the education, the really nasty hearings. They didn't realize that
Okay.
zero tolerance policy was very effective.
Would we be able to, are you able to say, Bob, now what Park Board, or pull the Park Board and come back with how they would feel about, are the options to give it back to city council or is going to a zero tolerance policy again an option?
Well, the zero policy, is administered by Anthony, he determines whether there was a violation, he writes up the recommendation, he sets the investigation, he determines what's happened, and then gives the park board, or gives the violators whatever the sentence is, And so they have a right to appeal that, and their appeal is to the park board, so that's what
Okay.
and
I
support
see.
or else deny or modify Anthony's recommendation.
Okay.
Recommendation.
Okay.
There were several on the park board that just did not feel that, as you get members, you know, as a volunteer, that was within their realm of, their scope of what, they should be doing.
Okay.
And part of that, I'm not saying that's part of it, we do have several new board members from back, there's probably 4 or 5, back when all of this, when the dog park started, I've been through several of them. I don't personally have a problem with it, but, there's several, hey, this is not what we signed up for. As a representative of
Okay, so,
and they did ask that,
okay, so at this point, what we've determined is that we're going to do research with regards to other dog park ordinances, and staff will share that with council, and then we can discuss it further later on.
Can we circle back to Jenny's original question? Which was, do we want to use this as the first time that we advertise an opening and solicit resumes? And if we, Anthony, you've pulled the scope of work for each board now?
We're incorporating that into the webpage now. The webpage does actually have a section, which with all the discussions, I hadn't gone to look at that. It does have a section where you can submit a resume right now. It does have.
Sure, no, but I mean, so that we could, if we were to advertise, we have a position on park board, and this is what park board does,
We're
and
doing
also we're,
And where it may say this would be an example, there could be some divisive hearings that you may be responsible
yeah,
for.
Yeah,
Or Board of Adjustment, you typically meet for a half an hour to an hour, 3 times a year, just it's not very often. Design and Review Board, this is an intensive board that meets monthly, and the meetings are 2 to 3 hours.
yeah, so people know.
Because, it's a working board. So we're trying to just keep it simple, but at least give people an idea.
I
So
thought
they
we
don't
were
just say,
gonna
that
get
board
that.
sounds
I
good,
didn't
and they don't
ask
realize
that, and I haven't
what it
seen
entails, to help better
He is
match
working on
people
it.
anyway.
yeah.
So how
What do
far along are you in the process of compiling that information that you were just talking about?
I have to talk to Laura. She's putting something together. I gave her my thoughts. She said she was gonna put together a page and send it to me. I think we're pretty far along, because I told her to make it a priority, last week. I can't
So
imagine-
within a week or two, it
a
should
week
be
or
up
two,
and running?
Well, yeah, and if we want us, we can send it out before, but yeah, I
But,
plan on.
I mean, we would probably want to clip the park board part of that text out into some kind of social media post and email to use through the city website, an email blast. How are people feeling about using this as the first time we try that?
I think it's great,
Yeah, just do it.
yeah,
We have the email blast, we also have social media, it reaches a lot of people.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it would.
And then we
be
can
good.
share it, and we can, yeah.
That along with the website, I mean, I don't think you can really do any more.
So we've determined that for the SBD, I'm going to proceed with the nomination, but for the Parks Board, we will advertise and, for that position. Okay. The last item on the mayor's report is that we have a guest with us tonight. Everyone here, except for maybe 1 or 2 people, has met with Bob. And Bob Slavin is here with, is it Slavin Management? And to interview staff and council members and citizens and other interested parties to start the process of the city manager selection, and in particular to develop criteria so that we can begin that process. So, welcome. You know a lot more about our dog park than
You ever wanted
you
to.
probably ever wanted to. And that's the mayor's report. City attorney's report? City manager's report?
Nothing,
Okay, is there a need to hold a closed session?
Oh,
yes.
sorry. Wait. For the city manager memo, do you know, when we will hear from, like, the Sun and Station Apartments Phase 2?
No,
And is that an apartment building or a parking lot?
apartment with a parking lot for the apartment complex. It'd be similar to what you see now, it would just be directly north of that.
Okay. And
I believe it'll be in the near future since they've gone to the school district.
when are they going to planning and zoning?
We have no formal application, but they're gonna
So do they
probably
have to
come
go through
before us to
planning and
look at.
zoning first? Are they gonna go through planning and zoning first, or?
No, I think they're gonna come talk to you first about
Okay,
the potential tax
Okay,
abatement, and
okay.
then take it to the next step.
okay,
But since they went to the school, it's public, but we still don't have the formal application.
okay.
Okay, so there's a need to have a closed session. Can I have a motion?
Motion to hold a closed session regarding a personnel matter.
Second?
We have a motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The council will meet in closed session. We'll come back, and there'll be no additional votes taken. So we're not adjourned quite yet.